Well, that was fairly exciting. An hour later, and then some. I don't even know what to say about that. It has been fairly exciting, and it does seem I'm going to go with almost supernatural in terms of the crazy antics that's been going on. Because it's not a computer issue. Well, I mean, there was that too, but there was multiple hardware failures. Both I/O devices or input-output devices, one of which is USB, one of which is FireWire, decided to fail in series, one right after the other. And then other aspects started falling apart. And then, of course, I tried to start the stream, and YouTube wouldn't let me for several attempts. So it was just like, wow. And I gave up. I just had quit. And yeah, Jason, it's like not only the tech demons, but I gave up. I just like walked away and said, my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like shaking my head. I don't know what to do. And then immediately I just kind of got nudged with, you know what to do. So I know it sounds cheesy, but I prayed about it. And then immediately I came back in, started the whole thing up again. Everything seemed to work fine. I don't even know what to make of. I don't even know. I got nothing. It is, it's remarkable. I got to tell you that. It is, and this comes on the heels of yesterday's live stream with Red Fox. And if you haven't listened to that, I encourage that. But I had recently, as those of you who have been following along know, I had recently just reached 1,000 subscribers and was able to monetize the channel. And the only reason I did that, of course, is to open up some super chats. And I'm really not big on the ads or anything. And as soon as I did that, they started throwing in ads like every 10 seconds. It was just silly. So I immediately took those out, and then trying to pay closer attention to how that happens. But I also demonetized everything on Sunday, right? So the Sola Scriptura and Ancient Wisdom from Modern World, I just don't think it's appropriate for those to be monetized or put ads in. So I completely demonetized those. However, I left the unintended consequences, the primary stuff, in monetization mode. And before this, just as soon as the stream ended yesterday with Red Fox, it was the first one that came back as I got the yellow card. So instead of all of them having been green for advertising, it immediately went to not the red card, but the yellow card of may be inappropriate for some advertisers. It's not advertiser friendly. Again, I'm not sure exactly what we said. I might have whispered a certain date. But it's a very odd thing, and so it comes right on the heels of that. I'm not being paranoid. I don't have any idea what's going on really, but it just other than it happened, so it was very weird. Well, now that we got that solved, and instead of our usual crowd, we had people like just a few people. We got Jason and Zach. Who they're willing to power through it. And again, I don't even know what to say. I just appreciate you guys hanging out. And again, I do this for you, not for me. So give me a moment, and I'll switch over here. So let me move to this like that, and we'll take a look here again. So Ancient Wisdom for Modern World, and I tried to get this in before, but apparently I was just talking to myself. Because I had no idea the stream wasn't going. So the idea of this again is that if you haven't spent any time in the Bible, or you're curious about it, or you find it a difficult read, as many people do, some people say start at the beginning, and that is a great place to start. That's where Wayne McCroy and I have we began with Sola Scriptura. We started at the very beginning, looking through the book of Genesis, and we'll have our third episode of that, our third complete episode this evening at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. And we're just barely now into, I think, chapter 3, 4 of Genesis. So there's a lot packed in there. We spent an entire first episode just on Genesis chapter 1 because it is just fraught with all kinds of good stuff. Some people will say start at the Gospels, and that's also an interesting place if you want to get to know the person of Jesus and how he differs from what you're maybe taught, right? Even in churches, what Christianity is. If you read what he actually said and did, it's a very different story. That it's not fluffy bunnies and unicorn farts, certainly. He's apparently a real guy and did some things. I mean, I say apparently. I have experience with him. I know him. So it's just I'm not very evangelical in my beliefs, and I don't even call them beliefs. It's just I have a relationship, right? So I don't. It's not my purview to try to make other people believe the way I do, or to even cast opprobrium on their beliefs if it's different. They're more than willing to do that, and I did get kind of the first, I guess, real troll on the Red Fox episode from yesterday. I don't mind pointed questions. I enjoy them. I like to respond and answer in the best way I understand it. But when someone wants to just simply argue and just, call you names, come from a point of view that's pedantic, it's like, I don't have any, I'm not interested in that. I have no need to argue. You can believe whatever you want. It's no interest to me. Again, I'm willing to answer questions, and in fact, I've taken questions that people asked and made videos on them because again, if somebody wants to know, I'm more than happy to share what I know. But somebody wants to, again, argue and be snotty, I don't have any time for that. Just not interested. I don't have any need to be right. I don't have any need to try to convince anybody else of my views. I'll explain it as best I can. But all right, so the idea of Proverbs then is that if you, again, want a place to just kind of dig in and see what it's all about, Proverbs is just about right in the middle of your Bible. It's in the Old Testament and ostensibly written by Solomon, who was the son of King David. And as the story goes, when he was but a youth, a wee lad, God appeared to him in a dream and asked him, what would you that I give you? And Solomon, instead of asking for riches or fame or wealth, power, long life, beauty, asked instead for wisdom. His father had instilled him with the idea of gain wisdom over silver and gold. So he asked for wisdom, and apparently the Lord was pleased with his request and gave it to him in abundance. Would I please take your wrench away? Okay, I got you. That's the first time I've asked that question, but I can absolutely do that. Let's see here. There you go. You bet, Zach. Done. Okay, so here's the... So again, the Lord was pleased with Solomon's request and gave him wisdom and abundance. And many people of that age came to see him to understand it. He built the first temple in Jerusalem. So that's the story of Solomon. That's ostensibly who wrote the book of Proverbs. And it's a great, from my perspective, a great amount of wisdom and insight into the human condition. There is a number of things there that point toward the Creator. Again, even if you're uncomfortable with that, if you just take a look at what was written and what's been said, I think you'll find it inarguably very astute observations about humanity and very good advice. And so there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and if you count the Pope-ular Calendar, again, that's I far prefer the original sky clock. It was, again, in the book of Genesis, it says that the luminaries were put in the firmament, let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and that is apparently the original meaning and intention of those, also to give us a light in the daytime and nighttime. And they do seem to have an influence over things. So without getting too deep into that, it does seem that there's more there than simply meets the eye. And everything that we've been taught to poo-poo seems to have some basis in actual fact. So with 31 days and 31 chapters, you can pick a chapter for each day of the month and read that. I encourage it. Do it for, if you've got the temerity to do it for 3 months, I think you'll find it instills in you a different outlook. And if you can follow some of its advice, you probably will, well, let's go here. So today is the 5th, and so of course I will do Proverbs chapter 5, but I'm going to start with Proverbs 4. It contains some of my, a couple of my favorite phrases within the entire book of Proverbs. And so I'll move on from 4 to 5. But let's take a look here, and I'll let's see, that's not the one I want. I want this one here. and take a closer look there. So, beginning Proverbs chapter 4, there is a great deal of encouragement within the entire book of Proverbs to seek after wisdom. And so this begins with a father's lesson to get wisdom. Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention to gain understanding. For I have given you sound learning. Do not forsake my instruction. When I was a son to my father, tender and special to my mother, he taught me and said, lay hold of your words in your heart, of my words in your heart, and keep my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will guard you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme. Acquire wisdom with all of your acquisitions. Get understanding. Prize her, and she will exalt you. She will honor you when you embrace her. She will set a garland of grace upon your head. She will give you a crown of glory. Notice here that the author chooses to embody and personify wisdom as a feminine attribute. And it is in part this, as well as many, there are many passages in the book of Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job, which do personify wisdom and these particular characteristics in a feminine aspect. And also justice and power and discipline in a masculine aspect. And it is in part this, and in part just my direct experience with the Creator, and I don't know, implicature, if you will, that that is part of their experience, that while not encapsulated within time as we are, and outside of it, outside of that dimension, there is some sort of passage of time, if you will. My understanding, again, from just my direct relationship, is that eons, so just so long you can't imagine, of eons past, of them being the only thing that existed. And in fact, it was one. And then in order to run through these I would call them sort of thought experiments, intellectual pursuits, split himself into two aspects, a masculine and a feminine, one that took the side of justice and right, discipline, one that took the side of compassion and wisdom and understanding. And they would argue these points back and forth, and also to mitigate some of the loneliness. And ultimately, it was this desperate loneliness that caused them to, at the risk of their own existence, literally pull a portion of themselves out to be a third party. And that was the first of creation, which became the person that we know as Yeshua, Jesus, the first fruit of all creation, and God's only begotten Son. That this comports well with that, and that's part of why I don't think it's a mistake that its personified wisdom is personified as a feminine aspect. Listen, my son, and accept my words, so the years of your life will be many. I instructed you in the ways of wisdom. I have guided you along straight paths. When you walk, your step will not be hindered, and when you run, you'll not stumble. Hold on tightly to instruction, and do not let it go. Guard it, for it is your life. Do not enter the path of the wicked or walk in the way of evil people. Avoid it and do not travel in it. Turn away from it and pass it by. For they cannot sleep until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep until they make someone fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. I'm sure that you can see this exact thing play itself out in the news every day. And you see it certainly in social media, people becoming trolls. They're not happy until they upset people. That's the entire purpose of their existence. The path of righteousness is like the light of dawn, shining brighter and brighter until the full day. The way of the wicked is like darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. My son, pay attention to my words and incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to the whole body. Guard your heart diligently, for from it flow the springs of life. This is one of my favorite verses in all of Proverbs. In every version, it comes off just, it is really beautiful. Watch over your heart with great diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. There's another one that says, guard, above all else, guard your heart, for from it flow the well springs of life. It is, again, one of my favorite sayings. Keep thine heart with all diligence, for thereout cometh life. It is from the abundance of a man's heart that comes works, according to Yeshua. Put away from you a froward mouth, a wicked mouth. Let's go back to, let's do this one. because again, this is interesting that you can look at the different interpretations and going back, and if you study this and get into using Strong's Concordance and that sort of thing. Thank you, John. All right. So let's see here. Put away from you a deceitful, lying, misleading mouth, and put devious lips far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead toward the path of a moral courage. Let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you toward the path of integrity. Consider well and watch carefully the path of your feet, and all your ways will be steadfast and sure. Do not turn away to the right or to the left where evil may lurk. Turn your foot from the path of evil. Again, I think these are well worth consideration, these thoughts. Gathering, in fact, you know what, I'm going to go back to, let me go back here. I'll go back to Proverbs 3 and back up here, because this, again, has some of my favorite stuff. I'll just do a few bits of this before moving on to Proverbs 5. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life, and tranquility and prosperity, the wholeness of life's blessings, they will add to you. Do not let mercy and kindness and truth leave you. Instead, let these qualities define you. Bind them securely around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. So find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Trust and rely confidently in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight or understanding. In all your ways know and acknowledge him and recognize him, and he will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block your way. That is one of my absolute favorites in all of Scripture, is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. That, to me, is some of the most profound wisdom found within Scripture. So let's move now to Proverbs 5. That's the Proverbs of the day. Yesterday, again, was the 4th, and we in the United States celebrated, quote, independence. It is, again, in my view, after much research, not independence from the crown, but rather we became instead a franchise. And if you look closely at it, it does seem that they had some very nefarious ideas about what we would become and lied about it from the beginning. But without getting too deeply into that, Proverbs 5. This is going to go directly into the idea of sort of chastity, which many people, especially in the modern era, consider kind of uptight and fuddy-duddy. You know what goes where and why, and sex is fun. Of course it is. Dad made it. He knows what it's all about. But as I've said before, most of his direction is to keep you from harm. And as you begin to find out, if you spend any time doing it, it is pretty much impossible to separate your heart from your genitals. If you try, and it is harmful to you. And I think that everything he does is to try to keep you from harm. So it's not to prevent you from having fun. It is to keep you safe. So we begin with, again, Proverbs 5:1. My son, attend unto my wisdom. Bow thine ear to my intelligence, that thou may keep counsel, and that your lips may conserve knowledge. For the lips of the strange woman drop like a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, and her steps uphold Sheol. Lest you should ponder the path of life, her ways are unstable, you should not know them. Hear me now, O ye sons, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Remove the way far from her, and do not come near the door of her house, unless you give your honor unto others, and your years unto the cruel. Lest strangers should be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. And you mourn at the last when your flesh and body are consumed, and say, how have I hated chastening, and my heart despised reproof? Why was I not teachable? And you have not obeyed the voice of those who chastened you, nor inclined your ear to those that instructed me. I have been in almost every kind of evil in the midst of society and the congregation. Drink waters out of your own cistern, and running waters out of your own well. Let your fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of thy water in the streets. Let them only be thy own, and not for strangers with thee. Keep your own stuff. Let me come back here. I'll do this. So again, just changing versions here. So drink water from your own well, basically, flowing water from your own cistern. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets, so again, giving away all your things, keep your eye on your own stuff. It's not to be selfish. It's to don't take from anyone else, right? Don't steal theirs, and develop your own. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated with her love. Isn't that great? Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman, and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly he is led astray. Good morning, Sue. Welcome back, and welcome to those who were with me in my earlier struggles. It was just remarkable. I don't really have the words to describe. I mean, I can tell you what happened, but I can't tell you why. Everything failed. The YouTube prevented the stream 5 or 6 times. It started it, it failed it, it started it, it failed it. And then 2 entirely different hardware audio platforms, which are separate. One is connected via USB, one is connected via FireWire. Both of them failed. And it wasn't a software issue. They physically failed. And everything needed restarting. It still didn't work. I gave up and was walking away. My wife said, what are you doing? It's like, shaking my head. I don't know what to do. And then, like I said, I just got a little nudge going, you know what to do. Just pray. So I did. I came back, and suddenly everything worked fine. I can't explain it. It's very weird. So with that, there's Proverbs 3, 4, and 5, parts of 3, 4, and 5. Again, I would strongly encourage that you spend some time just getting to know the book of Proverbs. It is a fascinating book of wisdom. You can easily find multiple translations online, and many that will show them side by side to you. And and there's a great Bible app that I've downloaded onto most of my devices, and it goes through all of, it has probably 140 different translations that are available. So you can kind of go through and compare those. And it's a fascinating look at not only the way that we translate languages, but the way some have chosen to. I don't know if this particular web page has the message. So the message is a paraphrase version. It's not a translation or a transliteration. It's a paraphrase. So they do, in sometimes, a pretty good job of getting sort of the essence of what the author was trying to say. But many times the words are very different. But I'll do this passage again in the Message, and it is a modern translation, and one that, again, I don't necessarily recommend it for direct study because it is so far from the original words, but so many times, again, the ideas are pretty spot on. Dear friend, pay close attention to this, my wisdom. Listen very closely to the way I see it. Then you'll acquire a taste for good sense. When I tell you, you'll keep out of trouble. The lips of a seductive woman are oh so sweet, her soft words are so smooth. But it won't be long before she's gravel in your mouth, and a pain in your gut, a wound in your heart. She's dancing down the primrose path to death. She's headed straight for hell, and taking you with her. She hasn't a clue about real life, and who she is or where she's going. So, my friend, listen closely. Don't treat my words casually. Keep your distance from such a woman. Absolutely stay out of her neighborhood. You don't want to squander your wonderful life, to waste your precious life among the hard-hearted. Why should you allow strangers to take advantage of you? Why be exploited by those who care nothing for you? You don't want to end your life full of regrets, nothing but sin and bones, saying, oh, why didn't I do what they told me? Why did I reject a disciplined life? Why didn't I listen to my mentors or take my teachers seriously? My life is ruined. I haven't one blessed thing to show for my life. Do you know the saying, drink from your own rain barrel, drink water from your own spring-fed well? It's true. Otherwise, you may one day come home and find your barrel empty and your well polluted. Your spring water is for you and you only, not to be passed around among strangers. Bless your fresh flowing fountain. Enjoy the wife you married as a young man. Lovely as an angel, beautiful as a rose. Don't ever quit taking delight in her body. Never take her love for granted. Why would you trade enduring intimacies for cheap thrills with a whore, for dalliance with a promiscuous stranger? Mark well that God doesn't miss a move you make. He's aware of every step you take. The shadow of your sin will overtake you, and you find yourself stumbling all over yourself in the dark. Death is the reward of an undisciplined life. Your foolish decisions trap you in a dead end. Again, a great paraphrase of the original writing there in Proverbs 5. So with that, again, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you back again this evening, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, with Wayne McCroy for Sola Scriptura. And that's episode 3. Hopefully, we don't have any more issues. I can't even explain it. Again, it was remarkable that everything on its own failed, and without regard to what actually was happening. I mean, it was fine 5 minutes prior. It just felt like somebody didn't want y'all to get that message this morning. So again, not being paranoid, not being weird. It's just, I don't have any other way to describe it. So with that, guys, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me. And I will see you again next time. Well, hopefully this evening. And then don't forget Tuesday and Thursday morning with Rose 777 on Rose 777 channel. Thanks.